Welcome to Paranormal Papa Podcast, episode 17, coming to you from Ferocious Feline Studios in Cassopolis, Michigan. Today, we have got a special podcast for you on a special day. For those of you that didn't realize, today, December 5th, 2025, marks the 80th anniversary of the disappearance of Flight 19 in the Bermuda Triangle. It's those unknowns, those historic mysteries that keep us going and trying to find the answers or disproving any evidence that already exists to keep us motivated to continue the search to find those answers. And today, I thought it was only right, with everything in the paranormal community going on lately with debunkers and people attacking them. And as you all know, I am a big supporter of para-unity. And para-unity is not just the investigators and the believers coming together to provide the evidence and the existence of the paranormal and the supernatural, but also the debunkers, the skeptics, and the non-believers that keep our focus, keep our attention on our ultimate goal, finding that irrefutable evidence of the existence of these cryptids or of life after death, or whatever the case may be. So today, we're going to listen to a man named Benjamin Radford as he speaks at DragonCon in, I believe this was filmed or recorded in 2023. Now, Benjamin is a paranormal investigator, scientific paranormal investigator, and a skeptic. You think it's hard being a paranormal investigator? One should try being an investigator and a skeptic. But let's listen to what Benjamin has to say. This is good.
Ben is a prolific author, I would say. He's written a rather a large number of books, 7 books total. Has a great board game, if you haven't played that. And he's going to do his discussions around how paranormal investigation and skepticism intersect. So everybody give it up for Ben Radford.
Thank you. Appreciate your coming out. As before, I know there's lots of stuff that you could be doing other than sitting here listening to me babble on. All sorts of cool other people who are doing interesting, fascinating things, costumes and whatnot. So I appreciate your spending the next hour here, or 59 minutes and 1 second. I had originally envisioned this as being a Q&A, and we'll certainly have plenty of time for Q&A, although it occurred to me that I should probably start with sort of a little primer for those sort of maybe that would ground the discussion, because not everybody here is skeptics. Many of you are, but some of you just sort of wandered in, probably thinking I'm doing maybe I'm Brian Brushwood, or I'm doing some sort of magic or something. You probably have no idea what the hell's going on. So let me give you more background on myself. As you noted, I am a research fellow with the Committee for Skeptical Inquiry, CSI. I'm the deputy editor for Skeptical Inquirer Science Magazine. I've written 7 books, contributed to about 20 books. I gave a talk earlier today on organ theft urban legends. Some of you were there. And this the whole, they do your kidney stolen and it's sold on the black market. And there's a couple versions of that was interesting. And then yesterday I gave a talk on crystal skulls. It's one of the chapters in my new book, Mysterious New Mexico. So more of my background. I have a bachelor's degree in psychology, master's in education. I've been on CNN, Good Morning America, Learning Channel, Discovery Channel, blah 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 blah. And usually the reason that I'm up here on TV is because there's some channel who's doing some investigation that I'm an expert on. For example, anybody here seen a show called The Dead Files? Okay, a couple of hands there. Yeah, I was in just 3 weeks ago. I was in Jamaica. I got a call from a producer for The Dead Files. I'd never seen the show, so she's like, "Oh, I'm a producer for Dead Files." I'm like, "Okay, that's great. And what is that? Is it a podcast?" So anyway, it's on the Travel Channel or something. And it's a TV show that has there's two main stars. One is I think a retired New York City cop, and there's another side was a woman who goes around and she speaks to the dead, or at least that's what she thinks. That's what she claims. I don't quite know what she does, but that's what they claim, and they go into investigations. And the reason I was called was because the producer said, "Yeah, we're doing a show on the White Witch of Rose Hall, which is Rose Hall is a famous haunted plantation in Montego Bay, Jamaica." And I had actually written a book chapter in one of my books, Scientific Paranormal Investigation. Chapter 12 is on Rose Hall, and I went there and I did investigation, and I went into the history of it, and I essentially solved the case. It was supposed to be haunted by this demonic witch who'd murdered 4 husbands, and there was all sorts of weird, creepy stuff going on, ghost photos and whatnot. So anyway, in that case, they said, "Well, look, we did some research, and we're going to be doing something on this plantation, and apparently you're the only person that investigated it and solved it." I'm like, "Well, yeah." So like, "Okay, well, we want to fly you out." And I saw it was a Los Angeles number. Say, "You want to fly me out to LA or to Jamaica?" Like, "Jamaica." "All right, cool. We can do that. I will happily be your trained monkey for a day in Jamaica." So that was kind of cool. I have no idea when it's going to air, but it'll be on there at some point. So, and then I was on a series called "Is It Real?" It was on National Geographic. It's a good series. A couple people nodding who've seen it there. So anyway, so I'll be talking again, sort of on essentially applying science to the paranormal, and I'll give sort of an overview of the strategies that I take in terms of investigating everything from crop circles to Bigfoot to ghosts, things like that. I'm probably best known for having solved the mystery of the chupacabra, the Hispanic vampire beast. For those of you who know that, I wrote a book called Tracking the Chupacabra, and sort of examined all the different parts of that story and everything from the folklore, the conspiracy theories behind it. So I've done any number of mysteries. So if there's a particular topic you're interested in, ghost investigations, cryptozoology, crop circles, whatever weirdness you have a question about, I probably have investigated it firsthand, or I know people who have and done research on it. So let me go ahead and start by giving some of the basic tools involved in terms of how to approach these subjects skeptically and critically. So there's many fundamental common misunderstandings about skepticism, science, and the paranormal, even among many skeptics. And as a skeptic, one of the most important basic questions and lessons that I've often encountered that helps to solve mystery is you have to question your assumptions over and over and over again. Whether I'm talking to a person who believes that they saw a ghost or a Bigfoot or whatever it is, over and over again, when they're telling me their story, they're presenting their claim to me. I'm listening to their narrative, and I'm hearing what they're saying, and they're making these unwarranted assumptions based upon their interpretations of what they experienced. And so they'll be. I'll give you an example. I was in it's called the Golden Horseshoe. It's south of Toronto, between Toronto and Buffalo, and there's a haunted place. It's called Haunted Fort George. It's supposed to be one of the most haunted places in Canada. And I was there for a TV show, and I was sort of the token skeptical investigator, and they had all these other people, and I'm like, "Yeah, I'm the asshole. I'm the skeptic. Yeah, come on, bring me in here. That's fine." And so we spent an overnight, and I think total of 3 days there. And as we were wrapping up, a woman came up to me, and she was a ghost hunter. She's still there, as far as I know. And she said, you've been here for a couple of days. I see you've done research into the ghosts and these other phenomena. She says, will you listen to my evidence? And I was like, sure. She says, well, I have an EVP, which for those who don't know, it's electronic voice phenomena. It's basically what are claimed to be ghost voices. And so I said, sure, I'll listen to what you have to say. She says, well, here's the deal. I was walking around haunted Fort George, and she had a parabolic mirror, sort of looks like a gun. You see these on the sidelines of like football games. They're little disc things, and it basically captures the sound. And I said, okay, what do you have? And she says, well, I recorded a child ghost laughing. And I said, okay. I said, I will listen to your audio. That's fine. I'll listen to your evidence. I said, but before I do, let me ask you, how do you know? She's like, well, what do you mean? I said, how do you know what a child ghost sounds like? Because I don't. I mean, I don't. I know what a human child sounds like. I can guess that. I don't know what a ghost sounds like, and I certainly don't know what a child ghost laughing sounds like. So if you're coming to me with your evidence and you're saying this is what this is, I'm just going to ask you how do you know that that's what you recorded? I mean, I'm not saying it's not. It could very well be. But if you're going to present it to me as evidence, I'm going to ask, why is that in your interpretation? And she didn't really have an answer. It was sort of like, oh. I was like, this isn't a trick question. I'm just trying to explain to you that, there's lots of interpretation in this. And so anyway, so this is where we get into questioning the assumptions. So there's a great quote from Bertrand Russell. It says, in all affairs, it's a healthy thing now and then to hang a question mark on the things you've long taken for granted. And again, it's, if you're gonna present something as evidence, and if you're gonna have these assumptions about what you experience in terms of them being paranormal or potentially paranormal, look at the bases and the assumptions that underlie that premise. So here's another question that comes up: how can proven scientific methods of research be used when, by definition, the paranormal is that which defies scientific explanation? I've heard this over and over again. So the idea is like, well, the paranormal, we're talking, things that the science can't explain, ESP, ghosts, whatever else. I'm like, why do you think science can't explain that? It's like, what is this assumption that why? Oh well, we can't detect these things. The fact is, the paranormal doesn't mean something that defies scientific explanation. There's lots of different definitions that people use. But basically, if all the paranormal meant was it's something we don't understand, well, there's no shortage of things we don't understand. In germ theory, for example, before germ theory was around, that was paranormal in the 1700s. People didn't know why one person got disease, another person didn't get disease. They attributed it to God's wrath, for example, or to take your pick. So just because we didn't then have the scientific answer for why something happened, and we do now, that doesn't mean that it was once paranormal. It just means we didn't know what the answer was. And so the fact is that many paranormal things can be and have been scientifically tested, from Bigfoot hair to psychic powers. I've spoken to many people say, oh, well, the problem is that scientists should test psychics. I was like, they have. Huh? Yeah. Scientists have been testing psychics for decades. Huh? Yeah, do a little research. It's all there. This has been done before. Cornell Labs, the Society for Psychical Research, etc. I mean, there's ESP experiments done in the 1970s. It's not that no one has done this. It's the same thing with, or like ghosts. People are like, oh, well, if only someone would bring science to ghosts, that people think, well, one of the things people think is that ghost hunting only appeared 10 years ago with the TV show Ghost Hunters. I'm like, what are you talking about? It's like people have been looking for evidence of ghosts for well over a century. In Victorian England, it was very popular. Women of the day would have little parties, and they would have parlor games, and they would bring people over. They would try and use a Ouija board to contact the spirits. This is nothing new. The Society for Psychical Research in London, England, has been doing this since 1880 or something. So it's not that no one has looked into this. It's that when scientific methods are applied to this, the evidence simply isn't there. And same thing with Bigfoot hair. I've done a fair amount of research into Bigfoot, Loch Ness Monster, other things like that, cryptozoology, and same with Bigfoot hair. In fact, earlier this year, there was a research put out by an Oxford geneticist by the name of Brian Sykes, and Sykes did a very thorough analysis. It was published in a peer-reviewed journal. So this is an actual geneticist who's doing work, and he had for the last 2 years he had a call out for anyone who had what they believed was Bigfoot hair or Yeti hair, depending on what area of the world you're in, that was supposedly some unknown creature, to submit it. So he got something like, I think it was like 300 and some samples. Some of them were too degraded to use, and they ended up finding, I think, 200 and some. And every single one of them was identified. Some were elk, some were raccoons, some were moose, some were bear. One was human. There was a piece of carpet fiber that someone thought was Bigfoot hair. And so what happened was that every single one of these, when subjected to DNA testing, genetic testing, they were all identified. There's no mysterious hair. It's right there. And yet, if you look in books and magazine articles and blogs about Bigfoot, oh, well, this unknown hair. Well, as of earlier this year, there's no mystery there. That's not to say that next month or next year someone may not find a genuine piece of Bigfoot bone or hair, whatever else, that will revolutionize everything. That's simply to say that as of now, the evidence that has been presented, that actually has been looked at by scientists, is inconclusive at best. There's a quote from Hippocrates. It says, "Men think epilepsy divine merely because they do not understand it. But if they called everything divine, which they do not understand, well, there would be no end to divine things, right? Just because we don't understand something doesn't mean it's unknown, doesn't mean it's mysterious. It just means we don't know yet. Not necessarily paranormal." James Randi, the magician, the famous magician who many of you probably are familiar with, he's part of the James Randi Educational Foundation. He defines the paranormal as an adjective referring to events, abilities, and matters not yet defined or explained by science. I personally use it to simply mean something that appears to be supernatural or seems to violate natural laws. Its nature might or might not be supernatural, but it certainly appears to be, at least superficially. So when I'm going to investigation, my job is to try and look for what evidence is being offered that's falsifiable. In science means we can test it. It's not subjective. It's not, well, it's not some anecdotal evidence. It's not just, rumors. Some people say this is something we can test. It's a piece of bone. It's a piece of hair. It's something that's tangible. And so many so-called paranormal topics are not outside the realm of science at all. Instead, they are indeed falsifiable. I was doing I'll give you an example here. I was doing I was on a TV show called Mystery Quest, and it was a haunted place in Carson, California. And I was there it was called Andlebury Estates, and the ghost hunters had been there, and they'd done their dog and pony show there. And we were shooting for like 3 or 4 days, and I was going back to the hotel, and the producer was driving us back, and I was there along with a ghost hunter. It was I forgot. Well, actually, I do know his name. I'm not going to bother to tell you his name, but he was with his crew, and they were like, okay, yeah, we're just we're been a long day. We're all heading back. She's driving us back to the hotel. And I said, and I had previously that day, I'd seen them. They showed up in their sort of ghost hunters mode. They had all this equipment. They had electronic voice. They had cameras. They had this. They had EVP. They had all EVP recording stuff. They had all sorts of high tech gear. I think he's bragging like, we have $70,000 worth of gear here. It's like just cases and cases and cases and cases. And they're unloading this huge van. I'm watching. It took them 3 hours to unload. And as we were driving back, I said, we're just chatting here. It's like, why is it that you think that we still don't have good evidence for ghosts? I'm just, what's your opinion? I'm just curious as we're driving back. And he's like, well, he says, I think it's because ghosts can't be detected through scientific measurements. And I said, hold on here. You've got $70,000 worth of gear. You've got cameras, you've got this, you've got that, you've got all this stuff set up. What's all that for? If you truly believe that ghosts cannot be detected by scientific instruments that would be cameras, then what is all this stuff? He's like, oh, I hadn't really thought about that. And the producer's looking at me, she's just driving, she's like, oh God, where's this going? And it wasn't a gotcha moment. I wasn't trying to trick him. I'm serious. Like, you can't have it both ways. You can't say that the reason that we haven't found good evidence of ghosts is that ghosts can't be detected. Well, that's what ghost photos are. Every alleged ghost photo, that's something in the visible light spectrum that we can detect. So either all the ghost photos are not actually ghosts, that is, they're artifacts of the camera process, et cetera, or they're real. I mean, you can't have it both ways. Either they can be detected by instruments or not. And this supposed ghost hunter would spend years doing this. It never occurred to him that his own premise is undermined by what the hell he's doing. So that sort of gives you some idea of some where some of this can go. So the question is, how can you study something or be an expert on something that's never been proven to exist? And that's a fair question. What I try to explain to people is that the issue of expertise and credibility and authority in paranormal subjects is very important, because anybody can call themselves a paranormal expert, and a ghost hunter, whatever else. That's all well and good. But of course, at the end of the day, the fact is that ghosts have not been proven to exist. I wish they had. It'd be cool. I'd love to be the person that finds hard evidence of ghosts, but at the end of the day, we don't know for sure that ghosts exist. We don't know for sure that Bigfoot exists. We don't know for sure that psychic powers exist. You can argue there's evidence on both sides, but I think almost nobody would dispute the fact that these have yet to be proven. So then the question becomes, well, how can you be an expert on these things? Well, the fact is that it depends on how you define what is it you're studying. So, for example, sociologists and economists are experts on intangible and abstract subjects. It's quite possible to be an expert on the folklore of something, or the concept of something that may or may not exist. And the example I have here is a priest or a rabbi. A priest or rabbi is a legitimate expert and authority on a specific set of beliefs that may or may not be objectively true. Right? No one's yet proven that God exists. And so, again, to believers, it's clearly true, to others it's not true, but at the end of the day, a rabbi and an imam are going to have different ideas about what's been proven and what hasn't. So you can look at these people and you can say, yes, you are an authority on this particular belief system, but that belief system is not necessarily anchored to anything in reality. I mean, when I was 20 years ago, I was an expert on D&D, 4th edition. Yeah, 4th edition. You mean I knew all the stuff in the monster manual. I knew what all the to hit AC0. I mean, all the different types of dragons and what sort of potions. I was an expert on that. They're not real, but I was an expert on it. So it's the same thing here. So I'm an expert in many areas of the paranormal, including the chupacabra and ghosts, in terms of the history, evidence, and the evidence offered for them. So, for example, if you want to talk about the history of evidence offered for Bigfoot and ghosts, I can talk to you for a couple hours on that. What do you want to know? We can talk about that. That doesn't mean that it's necessarily real, so I can talk about the folklore behind things. I talked earlier today about urban legends. I can talk about the vanishing hitchhiker urban legends and some of these stories and what are called folk tales, friend of a friend tales, and how these legends get started. So again, there's nothing tangible behind it, but we can certainly be experts on it. And you can also be an expert on the psychology of the experience. And this goes back to my background in psychology. And so when I interview eyewitnesses who tell me they saw a ghost, or they saw a Bigfoot, or they saw this, or they saw that, I can, because of my background and just having the experience, I can talk to them and say, I believe you had this experience. I don't doubt that at all. The question is what you experienced actually a ghost? Is what you experienced actually a Bigfoot or whatever? And maybe it was. I'm not saying it wasn't, but we need to, we can't just assume that whatever your interpretation is the correct one. So, and this is an important part, and I don't expect you to read the whole thing. I'll just touch on this quickly. But in a lot of discussions about paranormal topics, the subjects themselves, ghosts, Bigfoot, etc., they're treated as if there's some universally agreed upon definition of what they are. But there's not. I can give you a half dozen different definitions of ghosts. Some people think, for example, that there are projections from inside the mind that go out into the real world. That ghosts are created by the human consciousness. Other people believe that ghosts are created by if there's an untimely death, whatever that might mean. Presumably most deaths are untimely unless they're suicides. But some people believe that ghosts, I mean, there's all sorts of different theories. So there's lots of different definitions. It's not as if everyone knows exactly what a ghost is. Now, for example, with Bigfoot, there is a sort of common conception about what Bigfoot is. Bipedal, covered with hair, lives in the Pacific Northwest, although they've actually been sighted all across the country. So they're sort of a general agreed upon idea, but no, we don't know what it is. So we can't say that this is necessarily true. And so what's important to understand from an investigative point of view is that when a person says, I saw a ghost or I saw a Bigfoot, all that means is that they're putting a label on an experience they had. They're saying, what I experienced most closely fits ghost. What I experienced most closely fits Bigfoot, right? So you have something that they experience that they can't explain immediately. Might be able to explain it at all. So if let's say they're hiking in the woods, they see something weird in the woods. What is it? It's a Bigfoot, right? If it's in the sky, what is it? UFO, right? If they're out on Lake Tahoe. Lake Tahoe has a monster. I don't know if you know that. Tahoe-Tessie. Okanagan, Lake Okanagan, Lake Champlain. If you're out on a lake, it's a lake monster. If you're in a spooky house late at night or somewhere in a cemetery, you're going to interpret it as a ghost. And so it depends on the context. So whatever context you're in, both psychologically and culturally and actually environmentally, is going to determine what you see and how you experience it. And so therefore, this is the problem that I see oftentimes, is that investigators will go into it as sort of without recognizing that what they're trying to seek is an explanation for an experience. Now that experience might in fact be a ghost. That experience, they might have actually seen a ghost, they might have actually seen a Bigfoot, whatever. I'm not saying they didn't, but you need to understand that we're not looking for, before you can get to, is this a real creature, is this a real phenomena, you need to understand what the psychology of their experience is. And so you can't claim to positively identify something without knowing the nature of that thing. I mean, correctly identifying X necessarily means that you know what X is. What established characteristics it has that distinguishes it from Y or Z. There's no way around it. So I saw a Bigfoot. Well, you don't know what Bigfoot is. Okay, I saw something that was big and hairy in the woods. Okay, that's great. I'll go with that. The problem is that something that's big and hairy in the woods, that's not necessarily Bigfoot. And so you have to go from there. So once the mystery is approached from this angle, it becomes solvable. Once you understand that all they're talking about is an experience, basically a descriptor, at that point, then you can get into actually doing the investigations, because you're not hung up on trying to identify the characteristics of a particular ghost or particular psychic experience. So you have to, the investigation becomes not one of identifying the Bigfoot or ghost, but of trying to understand what the eyewitness experienced and what they interpreted as that. So you have to use meaningful labels to understand the phenomena. I get this question a lot. It's very tiresome to me, but I do it. In my book, Scientific Paranormal Investigation, I devoted a whole chapter to this. The question is, why is what the TV show Ghost Hunters do? Why aren't they doing science? I don't have enough time to give you all the reasons, but one of the problems is that most of the amateur ghost hunting groups today, they're influenced by people such as Grant, who I just saw half an hour ago. We're signing autographs, and his show, the Ghost Hunter Show. And essentially what they're doing is they're doing what's called anomaly hunting. Instead of taking the claims that are presented to them, that is, a claim is that in a haunted house on moonless nights, on the third Thursday of every month, there is a female spirit apparition that goes down a hallway. That's a testable claim. You can be there on a moonless night on the third Thursday. Either some sort of female figure goes down a hallway, or she doesn't. This is testable. So that's the sort of claims that you have to investigate and solve. And so what the anomaly hunters do, including the ghost hunters, is that they look around for things. They're like, all right, well, let's walk around in a haunted. Turn the lights off, of course. That's always the first step. I've never gotten that. It's like if you're looking for something, even ghosts, turning the lights off is a bad idea. Because humans, I'll just give you a quick lesson, basic biology. Humans need light to see. I don't know if you guys are familiar with it, but this is why there's lights on me that I barely see you guys. And if you actually if you turn off the lights, you're intentionally reducing the amount of information available to you to identify whatever it is. So you're greatly impeding yourself. You're going out of your way to make your job harder.
A quick demonstration.
Oh my God, a quick demonstration. Exactly. Thank you. Thank you very much, Mark. Yes. And why was it harder to see when the lights were off? Because the lights were off. That's why. And so, well, see, here's the problem. So the ghost hunters, why do they do it? Because it makes dramatic TV. They can turn on the infrared, like, oh my God, it's so creepy. Well, no, this is not doing any good here. I mean, if think about this for a second. If it benefited you to have less information, then really what you should do is basically, put earplugs in, put a blindfold on, wrap yourself in like a rug, and like put yourself in the closet, or maybe like in a sensory isolation chamber. If that's truly the premise that you're operating on, then you should see ghosts all over the place. I personally prefer more information when I'm doing investigation, which is why I like to leave the lights on. Now, I've had a person come up to me and tell me, well, the reason they do that is that ghosts, they glow in the dark. And so that's why it's smart to turn the lights off, Mr. Smarty Pants. I said, well, actually, the fact is that ghosts are sighted in a wide variety of contexts, including during the daytime. In fact, most ghosts are not seen at night, oddly enough. They're certainly not under the conditions that ghost hunters are doing. For example, turning the light, I don't get it. They turn the lights off, they turn flashlights on. What are you doing? Do you want the lights on? Or do you want the lights off? What's this half-assed turn the lights off flashlight? What are we doing? I'm yelling at the TV and they're ignoring me and it's just pissing me off. So anyways, this is one of the problems with the TV ghost hunters. And so what they're doing is they're anomaly hunting. And so what they do is they go into an area and they're essentially generating their own claim. Instead of addressing and investigating the claims presented to them by the eyewitnesses, they sort of, oh, that's all great, whatever. We're going to go do our own thing. We're going to wander around this dark place with the lights off and then the flashlights on for 4-6 hours, blah, blah, blah. And they record all this stuff in cameras and video, whatever else. And then they go home and they sort of, because it's hours and hours and hours and hours of this stuff. And so they go home and it takes time to process it, and they often have different people spending hours going through it, combing through it, and eventually, usually what happens, if you record enough hours, then there'll be something weird eventually. Someone will fart, or there'll be a glitch, or something will happen. And like, oh my God, did you see this? On hour 13.402, there's a weird light in this. Well, okay, what the hell is it? I don't know. Must be a ghost. No, you're doing this the wrong way, guys. Here's the deal. Is Grant here? Okay. Grant, if you're here, if you're listening to me, this is not the way to do this. Because the problem here is that using that technique of anomaly hunting, you have lost the opportunity to do any meaningful investigation. Why? Because that weird sound that you think might be a ghost, that weird light that happened to come across this thing right next to a window near a busy freeway that you think might be a ghost, you don't know what that was because you didn't investigate at the time. You didn't find it until a week later when one of your guys was going, oh, this is weird. Well, you don't know what it was because you didn't look. There's no way to go back and recreate what you should have been investigating 4 days ago, a week ago. It's a lost cause. It's totally unscientific. And so anomaly hunting reverses the process of scientific investigation begins with a specific claim. Again, someone says, they offer a claim. I saw this, I experienced this, here's a photograph, here's this thing that could be a Bigfoot bone, whatever the hell it is. They bring it to you and you investigate it to the best of your ability. And anomaly hunting reverses the process, and it essentially puts the investigators in the position of needlessly generating new claims, because every time they see something weird they can't explain, it might be a ghost. It's like, go with what claims are being offered to you. Work from that instead of starting your own. So it's a classic case of arguing from ignorance, which is a common fallacy. It's basically, I don't understand X, therefore it's an anomaly. I don't know what made this weird sound. I don't know what had this light, therefore it must be a ghost. And I see this routinely. Bigfoot sightings, Goatfoot sightings, whatever else, where people will experience something they don't understand, and they'll assume, well, this must be paranormal. Like, no, it's just something you don't understand. But I see things I don't understand all the time. And at a fundamental level, it's incredibly arrogant. It's fascinating to me. You talk to these people, and because I've had people say that to me. They'll be like, I saw this weird thing, and this must be a ghost. I'm like, because we can't come up with any other explanation. I said, let me make sure I understand this. So, because you can't figure it out, it's unknowable. Right? Nobody, if you personally can't find an explanation for this, then no one else does. You're so smart, you have access to so much information that you are the pinnacle of knowledge, and if it's beyond you, then it's beyond all of us. Bullshit. There's all sorts of things this is why we go to doctors. There's something wrong with us. Think about this, right? This is why we go to doctors. This is why we go to mechanics. This is why we go to people who have more knowledge than we do. I don't know, something wrong with my back. I don't know what hurts. I don't know, did I break a rib? I don't know. Well, shit, it must be paranormal. No, you got something wrong with your back. Go to a doctor, you idiot. Go to an expert who knows what they're doing. And well, yeah, you pulled a disc, this, that. You hear clanking in the car? Well, paranormal. No, it's not paranormal. Go to a mechanic. They're the experts. That's what they do. But when it comes to paranormal investigation, that they turn that on their heads. So, I just talk about anomaly hunting in science. Scientists, as a rule, don't spend their time searching for anomalies. This is something I point out to people. Geologists don't spend their career sampling soils around the world looking for anything unusual. And epidemiologists don't randomly screen the public hoping to find some new disease. That's not how that works. What happens is the anomalies rise to the surface. The anomalies occur, and so there's an outbreak of Ebola. It's not that, in Africa, a couple weeks ago, it's not that people were constantly screening the entire world for Ebola. It's like it suddenly appeared. Once it appeared, that's something to investigate. It's not, to do otherwise is anomaly hunting. The example I give is conjoined twins are an anomaly. But it would be pointless for a researcher to spend his time in hospitals around the world waiting for a pair of conjoined twins to appear. Oh, I'll be at your hospital next week. Well, let's hope a conjoined twin appears. That's not how that works. When it happens, you go investigate it. You don't spend decades doing it. A couple final points. So give some time for the Q&A here. A couple things that what I try to impress upon people is you have to take the subject seriously. And this is one thing that I've really tried to do. I've been an investigator for 16, 17 years now. And I make a sincere, legitimate effort to understand and explain the mysteries that I'm presented with and the claims that I see. I remember I was talking at a Bigfoot conference in Pocatello, Idaho, about 5 years ago, and I was the token skeptic, of course. Everyone else in the room believed in Bigfoot, and I'm the guy like, well, actually, there's not. So I was on stage, and I'm talking to him about, very politely, of course, dodging tomatoes and Bigfoot scat, explaining why some of the evidence that they're presenting is dubious at best, including the fact, by the way, that do you guys know what the best evidence for Bigfoot still is today? It's the Patterson-Gimlin film that was shot in 1967. This is during the Johnson administration. All right, think about that for a second. Today, 2014, the best evidence for Bigfoot goes back to before I was born. There's something wrong with that, guys, because people these days, they got high-definition cameras, they got cell phones. We should be seeing a staggering improvement in the quality of Bigfoot evidence. Not Bigfoot, ghost evidence, UFO evidence, all these other things. There's more video cameras and higher quality videos and just more People are more able to document the world around them than ever before in human history. It doesn't make sense that essentially the evidence would have flatlined. That the evidence for Bigfoot is no better today than it was in '67. And frankly, the evidence for ghosts is no better today than it was 10 years ago, 20 years ago, 100 years ago. There's this vanishing evidence horizon. And I see that as fascinating. You may know the Fate magazine. There's a couple nods. It's not a great magazine, but anyway, it goes. What I find interesting is it dates back to the 40s and 50s, and so every now and then I'll pull one out, like from 1953. Well, evidence of extraterrestrials is going to be found any day now. Like, wow, 53, how's that going, guys? I guess that didn't really work out. The Bigfoot evidence, this and that. And the problem is that the people who spend their time researching this, they don't recognize this vanishing evidence horizon. They don't recognize that the evidence is not getting incrementally better. And it should, because in every other area of human investigation and human endeavor, geology, botany, medicine, in every other realm where we know it actually exists, where it's a field of study and people study it and can touch it and examine it, the evidence is incrementally better. There's published research. There's a building body of knowledge, and you don't have that in these subjects. And at some point, you have to ask yourself why. Second point, it's not enough to simply doubt. Oh, I didn't finish what I was talking about the Bigfooter. Sorry. Okay, so I'm at the Bigfoot conference, dodging tomatoes and Bigfoot scat, and I said, all right, so. They weren't really hostile, but, I was getting some evil eyes. I said, look, I'm not the enemy here. I'm not the bad guy. I said, you need to understand, addressing the Bigfoot crowd, I said, a lot of you have seen Bigfoot, you believe in Bigfoot, you sell Bigfoot books, this and that and the other. I said, you need to understand that out on the main street, the John Q. public thinks you guys are crazy. They think you're full of shit. They think that you're a nut job who's out there looking for Bigfoot, old yahoos and rednecks and that. I said, I'm taking you seriously. I will listen to your Bigfoot story. I will look at your Bigfoot evidence. I will look at your photographs and your videos. I will look at what you have. So I'm willing to put forth the effort and make a sincere, legitimate effort to examine this thing. So I'm not the bad guy here. I'm not your enemy. I'm trying to give this field scientific legitimacy. Same thing with ghost hunters. Every now and then I come across amateur ghost hunters, both locally in New Mexico where I live and elsewhere, sometimes for TV shows. And I say, look, I'm trying to help you improve your work. If you want ghosts to be accepted as valid entities, if you want, and they're so desperate for credibility, if this is really what you want, then use science. Science is how we prove things, guys. Science is how we get ahead. Science is how we build knowledge. And if you're not going to do science, like the ghost hunters don't do science, then this is why ghosts are in their 10th season of not finding ghosts. Finding Bigfoot. What, 3 seasons now? Still haven't found Bigfoot. How's that work?
Is there a prize now for finding?
I don't know. I'll $50 in a beer. Look, the fact is that this is not getting any better, and so people need to, so that's part is that you have to take it seriously. And this is what pisses me off about the people who look into these subjects. It's not that I think it's too silly to dismiss, because frankly that I find that offensive. I've had people say, well, oh, you waste your time on Bigfoot and ghosts and chupacabras, isn't this all silly? I'm like, no, it's not all too silly. I've spent years of my life on these things. I spent 18 months doing an investigation into psychic detectives. I spent 5 years researching the chupacabra. I solved that mystery through a lot of hard work and effort. This is not too stupid for me. This is what I do because I think the truth is valuable. I want to know. Are these things real or not real? If ghosts are real, that's great. I don't have anything against that. If Bigfoot's real, I want to be there. I'm not a debunker. I'm not trying to disprove these things. I want to know the truth. If the truth is these things are out there, that's great. Then we need to understand and explore them. If they're not out there, if these things that people talk about as this unexplained phenomenon, these mysterious things, if these things aren't truly out there, then the question becomes, in some ways, a more interesting one, which is, why are people reporting things that don't exist? Why are people experiencing things and interpreting them as being Bigfoot, ghosts, psychic phenomena, blah, if that's not actually happening? And oftentimes the answer goes to psychology. So you have to take it seriously. It's not enough to simply doubt. Doubt is as cheap as belief. I come across this occasionally with skeptics where I'll talk to somebody who's like, we're talking about ghosts or astrology or something. Like, oh, well, we all know that ghosts aren't real. It's like, we don't all know that ghosts are real. In fact, a great many in the public, if you look at polls, I think last time I was looking at polls, like 40% of people believe in haunted houses. So many people don't know that ghosts aren't real. In fact, many people truly believe them. And same, angels, guardian. I mean, there's all sorts of different things that people believe in. So these things can't just sort of be dismissed out of hand. And I said, well, why do you think that ghosts aren't real? Well, it just seems like, I don't know. Like, you don't know? Well, then what are you doing calling yourself a skeptic? You say you're informed about these things. I ask you, I have good reasons, and I can sit here and tell you why, in my experience, in my research, ghosts are not likely to exist. I can talk about that for a couple hours if you want. But I can talk. I'm not just going to say, well, that can't be true. No, that's not how you do it. You have to understand you have to do your research and understand the reasons behind that. Also, understand the history of skepticism and what we do. The history of skeptical investigations is not, a lot of people think it only goes back to James Randi, for example, who's still around. He did lots of great work exposing Uri Geller, the spoonbender, in the 1970s. Joe Nickell, Harry Houdini. Some people know, some people don't. He was spent a lot of his time exposing fraudulent spirit mediums. He was, of course, a magician and illusionist, but because he was a magician, he knew many of the ways in which mediums would essentially fake contacting the dead. He went out to expose that. Oscar Funkst, he's great. Did anybody know the Clever Hans story? All right, I'll tell a quick Clever Hans story. Okay, so it's just a great story. So we've got Clever Hans. Clever Hans was a horse. Very crazy, huh? Wow, that's really wacky, Ben. Great, thanks a lot. Clever Hans was a horse who could do math. Yeah, what? What, Ro? Yeah, he could do math. He could speak several languages, which is odd for a horse. Let's be honest. He could do the months. He knew when he was born. You're thinking, wow, most horses don't know when they're born. This one did. Very, very weird. So Clever Hans was exhibited. I think it was the late 1800s, if I'm not mistaken, maybe the late 1800s, early 1900s, and he was all over the world. I mean, this is sort of P.T. Barnum era, like the horse that can do math, and this and that. You could do algebra, and also I can't do algebra. I was like, well, the horse is very cool. Look at that. So Hans, it was just amazing because he could actually do this. So he would have people would come in from this is in Germany, and people would come in from all over Europe to see this amazing horse. They would pay money, and so what would happen is that his owner would be sitting there next to him, and he would say, Hans, what's 3 + 2? And of course, because horses can't talk, except for Ed, right? Ed could do it. He would stamp out the number 3 + 2. You go 5. There you go. 3. There you go. And everyone, the crowd's astonished. Oh my God, this is how 3 + 2. Like, Hans, what month were you born in? So he had a calendar: January, February, March. Tap. April. What date? 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th. April 4th. He's right. He was born April 4th. No one knew what was going on. Was it a trick? Was it a hoax? Did this horse really know how to do addition and subtraction and speak these other languages? No. What happened was the mystery was finally solved when a psychologist by the name of Oscar Funkst investigated it. And he found that what had happened was the horse was being unconsciously cued. So what happened is that whenever the horse's owner would get to the correct answer, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, he would lean in just slightly, or he would have a body position motion, just slightly change his position, and the horse would see this, and so he would know that he was supposed to stop stomping. So he didn't know anything. He was just being cued unconsciously by the owner. And the way he knew that, in fact, it's really brilliant testing. He had somebody, for example, if you take the owner away and you bring in just someone out of the crowd, say, what's 3 + 2? and he doesn't know. Well, of course, he would know what the answer was, or for example, you say, yeah, when were you born? If he didn't know, he just keep tapping. Oh, January, February, March. Okay, we're back in March again. Okay, because you take away and it was all unconscious killing, but it's a fascinating case study. I think it's on Wikipedia, the Clever Hans. It's just a brilliant case, 100 years ago, a little more than that, of a good skeptical investigation into an unknown phenomenon. Benjamin Franklin, I was named for him. He did incredible investigations into Anton Mesmer and mesmerism. And again, I don't have time to talk about that, but there's all sorts of rich history of skeptical investigators that I'm proud to call myself among, and many are still today. And so the last one is the evidence horizon, and that's what I mentioned earlier, is this notion that the evidence is always around the corner, over and over and over again. The evidence, the hard evidence for ghosts is around the corner. Psychic powers. I heard this over and over again, and it's never here. It's never here. It's always just a little further out. And look, the fact is that science is it's self-correcting, and so any belief that we have about the current status of science, it's only subject to new information, whatever else. And so there could be a study next month or next year that undermines or something else that we all believe. Same thing with ghosts. It could be that right now, as I'm speaking to you, it could be in Loch Ness, somebody is finding a washed up Loch Ness monster. That's absolutely possible. Someone's like, oh shit, well there's a big thing there, and no one knows what it is. Clearly a monster. It could be they're finding one right now, and we're going to hear about it on CNN tomorrow. Not likely, but it's certainly possible. And if so, that's great. I want to be the first one there. But people need to recognize the context and the history of these claims, because it really goes back farther. So we still have about 10 minutes. So that's time for some Q&A. Hope I haven't gone too long. Hope I've given you something to think about and some grist for the mill. There's my book, Scientific Paranormal Investigation. It's available on Amazon and elsewhere. And there's a caricature of me as a sort of Sherlock Holmes, actually done by Sarah Mayhew, who's a manga artist. So anyway, I will pause for applause and then take questions. Come on! All right, there you go. Line up the microphone, please. Oh, we have Mark Disler.
As a member of the Independent Investigations Group of Atlanta, we get contacted on a regular basis with people saying, I have something paranormal, I've seen a ghost, can you come out and investigate? Well, we spend a lot of time internally debating whether we should go investigate, due to the fact that maybe somebody contacts us through email, and you can read the email and say, I'm not sure this person is mentally all there. Mm-hmm. So how do you get contacted normally for, say, an investigation, and how do you handle that if you think maybe this person's really needs help rather than a paranormal investigator?
That's a great question. What I try to do is, it's difficult. I have a background in psychology, so I try and guide them towards. I have some ability to sort of work with them and try to get a bearing on what's going to help them out. I remember I was living in Buffalo at the time, and a guy contacted me. He was a middle-aged black guy, and he had like an egg-sized tumor on his neck. And he contacted me out of the blue. I'd never just sort of wandered in, and he started talking to me. I don't know where he got my break. How did he get in my office? I'm like, shit. How did he get through security? But he asked me if there was a doctor that could remove a ghost from his neck. And I said, not really. Why do you think there's a ghost in your neck? And he said that he'd seen the TV show Ghost Hunters, and he'd seen some episode that made it sound like a ghost had been in a house and had been driven out by like some sort of frequency, harmonic thing, whatever else. And he believed that's what had happened to him, and that it had gotten in his neck. And so at that point, I was trying to. He clearly needed help, and so here's what I told him. I said, because I knew that if I was totally straight with him, and I said, there's no ghost in your neck, he's not going to believe me, because he totally bought into this. And so I said, well, what you need to do is see a psychologist, because I said, I don't know if there's a ghost in your neck or not. I didn't want to feed his thing, but on the other hand, if I just flat out turned him away, then it wouldn't have helped him. So I said, I don't know whether there's a ghost in your neck or not. I don't think there is, but even if there is, you need to see a psychologist because it could be traumatic when it leaves. And he's like, oh yeah, I sort of see that. And so I guided him to social services, and I haven't heard back. I don't know if the ghost is still in his neck or not. But so I tried to sort of do my best to help him out with that. So it's difficult. I mean, that's one of the things where it's also important to recognize that most people who come to me with claims are not mentally ill. Lots of perfectly ordinary, sane people see ghosts. Lots of perfectly sane, ordinary people see Bigfoot and UFOs in the sky. There's nothing pathological about that. Everyone misunderstands things. There's nothing unusual about that. The question is, why do they interpret it that way? So thankfully, I've only had to deal with truly mentally ill people on a handful of occasions. And usually, I try, and to answer your question, I try not to encourage that their delusion and try to sort of guide them towards help that they that might hopefully work. Questions, comments? Come on, some of you have something to say.
Well, when somebody contacts you, and let's say they're not saying they got a growth on their neck or something, which obviously needs to be looked at by a different type of
somebody.
They say, oh, I've seen this ghost a number of times in my attic, and where we again have a lot of debate internally at the IIG is we're trying to determine, is this something worth investigating, and is this person really serious? So it's not a clear-cut, I've got a growth here that I think is a ghost. How do we weed those out? Because we're, on one hand, we want to go investigate, and on the other, it's like we don't want to make a situation worse if this person is not.
Right. Well, one way I handle that is whenever possible, I try to only go with cases that have the best evidence. So, for example, if someone just says to me, I believe there's a ghost in my house, I'll say, why? And if they just say, well, I just do, then that's great. There's nothing I can do with that. Do you have photos? Did other people see it? I mean, I don't know what the phenomena was, and so that would be one way of weeding it out, is if the person really has nothing to work with, no evidence to present. If it's simply a belief, well, believe whatever you want. I mean, I'm not being facetious, but I mean, there's nothing I can do with that. So that might be one way of sort of weeding out, is just if someone comes to you and they clearly are in that situation, if they're not presenting evidence for you that's falsifiable and testable, then it's like, I'm sorry, there's nothing I can do to help you. Yeah.
I want to know how you keep an open mind when you're constantly investigating things that turn out to not be true. When the answer is always no, how do you come to a new investigation with an open mind, saying at least in the back of your mind, there might be something to this, when your track record would say there's definitely not anything to this. Yeah.
Right. I mean, part of the answer is that I do think it's very important to keep an open mind. Like the saying is, keep an open mind, but not so open that your brain falls out. With each case, part of me really hopes that there's going to be a ghost this time. Part of me really hopes that this is going to be the Bigfoot video that's not as crappy as the rest of them. And it does sort of get after you've. I mean, look, people send me Bigfoot videos and ghost videos on a regular basis, and when I can, I try to help them out. But at some point, I've been doing this a long time. I can recognize these things, and so it's pretty clear to me this is what this is. The other answer is that I try to use each case as an opportunity to learn something new if I can. So, for example, each case is different. There's, there are certain, there's ghost photos that are a certain way. There's this and there's that. But with each case, there's individuals. I've learned something. To be honest, I've learned something new with every case I've investigated. There's always little twists, little turns, something I hadn't thought of. Somebody who. Just different circumstances that help inform me for future investigations. So that's how I try to look at it. Is yes, I'm hoping that this is going to be real. given my background and knowledge and experience, this is not likely to be real, but I'm open to it being real. And even if I sort of, even if I kind of know that it's not going to turn into anything that's, you know, that's real or valid, but then the question becomes, well, again, what was their experience? You know, what can I learn from talking to this one person that I can use in later investigations? Say, oh, you know what, this was like this person in this other case. So it's sort of like investigators build a body of background experience that helps inform later ones. Yeah.
You talked about why you do what you do and how enthusiastic about it that you are, but what do you do in the face of criticism, even from people within the skeptic community who say you're just a Bigfoot skeptic and you know, that's been done, let's move on to important things. Have there been times when your investigations have helped people change things?
Yeah. I mean, that's a good question. You know, I think that you know, it's easy to sort of dismiss people as like, oh, I mean, again, on occasion, I'm like, oh, he's just a Bigfoot skeptic, this or that. But the fact is that, in fact, they don't really know what I do, because I do a wide variety of stuff. I write about urban legends. I write about mass hysterias. I write about conspiracy theories. I mean, it's sort of ironic in that the things that I'm best known for are only a small slice of what I actually do. I mean, yeah, I'm known for Bigfoot and ghosts and chupacabras. I do media criticism. I do all sorts of other stuff. And so, you know, you can sort of pick and choose if you want, but the fact is that I've got a big body of stuff. I did found plagiarism. In the next issue of Skeptical Inquirer magazine, I have an expose on eHarmony, whether their logarithms are scientific or not. Sort of consumer advocacy there. It's Hot Derek 102. But you know, it's also important to recognize, for example, you know, there are cases where I've actually helped people and it's been very rewarding. For example, there was a case I investigated in Buffalo. It's mentioned in my investigations book, where there was a couple that had been. It was right around Halloween, and they believed that their house was haunted. It was a couple and their young child, and they were terrified. They truly believed that there was a ghost in their house, and they'd gone to a psychic who could basically confirm their fears, and they were scared. And so it wasn't until they contacted me. I went in there. I did an investigation free of charge. I spent my own time, my own dime, and I ended up solving the case. And they were back in their home in time for Thanksgiving. And that's a case of where it wasn't some abstract, oh, we're educating the world. Like, these are real people who needed help. And they came to, after going to these ghost hunters and psychics who were misled and actually made the problem worse, they finally came to a skeptic. And I said, yeah, I will take you seriously. I'll do my best to investigate. And they were back in their home. And it was very rewarding to sort of see that, because it's actually helping real people. It's not just sort of abstract. Yeah.
Have you done anything around large group awareness trainings as far as debunking that?
I didn't catch that. What?
LGAT, large group awareness training. Have you run into anything like that?
I haven't personally. I've heard some about it. Off the top of my head, I haven't done anything particularly into that now.
And a follow-up, I like the phrase, doubt is as cheap as belief. Have you found anything that was doubted that you were able to verify?
Well, that's a good question. Probably the closest I would think would be maybe intuition. I think there may be something to intuition. By that I don't mean something supernatural, but just, again, having a background in psychology, there's ways in which we can sort of have knowledge without knowing how we know it, so we can pick up cues from the environment. And so that's probably the closest. I think we're at an end. If it's real quick, I'll see what I can do.
Oh, I was wondering if you had heard about the UFO sightings in Houston, like this past week.
Not this past week. I've been here, so I'll check into it. Anyway, thank you all for coming. We're at an end. Appreciate your time.
Welcome back to the studio. I really appreciate people like Benjamin Radford. As a paranormal investigator, every time we go to an investigation and we get those very strong FLIR videos, or we get those very clear EVPs, we believe in our soul that we have got that one piece of evidence that absolutely proves that our existence in this universe does not end with a slow ride in a long black car. But as we get back to our home base and we start to listen and look at this evidence, and the skeptic kicks in, the questions become a reality. Do we really have that one piece of irrefutable evidence? Benjamin goes to every investigation. He researches every case that comes to him with that skeptic first and foremost. And I'm sure there have been times when he has picked up that one piece of evidence that he believes is going to prove an afterlife. Like I said in the beginning, with everything going on in the paranormal community lately, with debunkers and skeptics being attacked by the people that they are debunking and skepticizing, I thought it was only right to bring a professional skeptic's views out on a podcast. It's not always easy to be that skeptic, but we all have to look at our investigations with that possibility that what we think we have, we may not have. But I'd like to thank you for joining us for episode 17 of the Paranormal Papa podcast. Benjamin Radford, scientific paranormal investigator and skeptic. Christmas is coming super fast, guys. We are 20 days away from Christmas, and we are 26 days away from the beginning of 2026. In 2026, we are going to be bringing those live interviews, where the live video can be watched on our YouTube channel, Paranormal Papa Investigations. And don't forget, if you are more into those historic mysteries and less into the paranormal, you have got our other channel, Living History's Mysteries, on YouTube. We're still going strong, and we're not going to stop. So until next time, take care of yourselves, take care of each other. God bless you, God love you, we do. And happy hunting. Just a quick reminder, ladies and gentlemen, Paranormal Papa podcast and Paranormal Papa Investigations runs without any financial support or sponsorship. If you would like to support the podcast or the investigations, that can be done through our PayPal account, www.paypal.me/MrHistory2020. If you would like to sponsor the podcast or the investigations, contact us at Midwest Parahistoric Society at gmail.com, and we can discuss the needs of the channel and the podcast. Until next time, take care and happy hunting.